All right, let's dive in. Today, we're exploring the Bitcoin market, but not just as a chart and a screen. I want you to think of it like a vast, deep ocean. It's a living ecosystem, you know? It's teeming with all kinds of life, from the tiniest shrimp all the way up to the most massive whales. And here's the cool part. Every single one has a unique role to play. I mean, have you ever really thought about it? When you see the price suddenly jump or tank, who's actually pulling the trigger? Is it one giant institution making a move? Or is it millions of tiny investors all acting at once? It's a simple question, but the answer, well, it tells you pretty much everything about how this market really works. So here's our dive plan for today. First, we're going to get a feel for the ocean itself, the key terms we need to know. Then we'll meet all the different creatures, starting right down at the seabed with the smallest players and working our way all the way up to the absolute titans that make the biggest waves. Okay, before we can start spotting all the different wildlife, we've got to understand the environment they live in. Think of it like this. There are two massive, powerful currents in this ocean that every single participant gets caught in, and these currents, they define almost all of their behavior. And here they are. This is probably the most important distinction we're going to make today. Short-term holders versus long-term holders. Think of the short-term holders, or STHs, like tourists. They're just dipping their toes in the water, and they get spooked really easily by a big wave or some scary news. But the long-term holders, the LTHs, they're the seasoned sailors. They've been through storms, they know the sea, and they are in it for the long haul. Understanding this difference is absolutely key to everything that follows. All right, let's meet our first group. Now, individually, they might seem small, but there are millions of them. They are the retail foundation, literally the bedrock of the entire Bitcoin food chain. And first up, we've got the shrimp. If you've ever bought even a little bit of Bitcoin, hey, congratulations, you're a shrimp. This is where everybody's journey in this ocean begins. Now, what's so fascinating about shrimp is that they kind of have this dual personality. On one hand, you've got the new guys, the short-term holder shrimp, who are more likely to panic and sell when things get choppy. But then you have the committed long-term holder shrimp, and these guys are a force of nature. They aggressively buy up every dip, constantly pulling Bitcoin off the market. They create what analysts call a persistent supply sink. It's a quiet but incredibly powerful undertow. So let's move up a notch to the crabs. Holding between 1 and 10 Bitcoin, that's a serious commitment. We're not talking about tourists anymore. These folks are established residents of the ecosystem. They've built their home here. And crabs, they provide an incredible amount of stability to the market. I mean, look at this. They are overwhelmingly long-term holders. They're the true hodlers. They almost never sell. The only time they even think about taking profit is during moments of absolute market craziness. This makes them the literal backbone of long-term supply, locking up coins and making the whole market foundation that much stronger. Okay, so we're moving up from the seabed and into the midwaters. This is where we start to find creatures with a bit more size, a lot more capital, and way more strategy. Their actions really start to make a splash. And our first one is the octopus. With anywhere from 10 to 50 Bitcoin, you're looking at a pretty serious investor. They're not just stacking coins anymore. They are operating with a very clear, calculated game plan. And their strategy is just brilliant. The octopus is a master of timing. They see everyone getting greedy and hyped up in a bull market, and that's when they sell to take profits. Then they just wait, patiently, until the depths of a bear market, when everyone's scared, and that's when they buy back in. In fact, when you see this group start buying, it can be a really powerful signal that the worst might be over. Next up, the dolphin. Now we're talking about some serious capital. This cohort often represents smaller institutions, family offices, or crypto funds, and their influence on the market is much more direct and much more immediate. So the whole deal with dolphins is their balance. See, they have a core stack of long-term holdings that they don't touch, but they also keep a pretty big chunk of short-term supply ready for tactical trading. This makes them super responsive to news. They're often the ones you see pushing the price around, testing those key support and resistance levels, almost like they're prodding the market to see where the weak spots are. And now, we ascend into the deep, dark waters. We are officially entering the territory of the giants. These are the whales, the entities whose every single twitch can create a tidal wave across the entire market. First, we come across the shark. We're talking 500 to 1,000 Bitcoin. This could be a super wealthy individual or a small hedge fund. Either way, they have some serious market-moving power. Now, you're going to want to pay close attention to this. Shark behavior is often seen as a leading indicator for the whole market. When you see sharks start to accumulate, it's often right before a massive rally kicks off. And on the flip side, when they start selling off their long-term holdings, well, that's a huge warning sign that a correction might be just around the corner. They're kind of like the canaries in the coal mine.
And here we go, the classic whale. These are the big players, major funds, large institutions. When a whale makes a move, everybody in the ocean feels the ripples. It's no wonder their wallets are monitored so obsessively by analysts.
This quote right here just says it all. You see, while their short-term trading can cause some chop, the real signal, the one everyone is watching for, is when their long-term holdings start to get sold. That process, distribution, is one of the most classic signs that a big bull market might be hitting its peak. It's a signal that the biggest, smartest money in the room is starting to quietly cash in its chips.
But believe it or not, there is one creature that is even larger, the humpback. Holding over 5,000 Bitcoin, these are the true institutional Goliaths. We're talking about the new ETFs or the huge corporate treasuries. And the key thing to understand about humpbacks is that their supply almost never moves. It is pretty much static. It's a long-term strategic holding, not a speculative trade, and that's exactly why their actions are so unbelievably profound. When they buy, like when a new ETF starts accumulating, it's a massive structural shift for the market. And when they sell, well, that's a rare market-defining event that can set the tone for years to come.
Okay, let's come up for air. We've surfaced from our deep dive. We've met all the weird and wonderful inhabitants of the Bitcoin ocean. So what does it all mean when you put it together? This little table is basically our field guide, right? It lays it all out. You've got the constant, steady accumulation from the shrimp forming the market floor. You've got the crabs acting as the backbone. Then you have the strategic octopus and tactical dolphins in the middle, all the way up to the trend-setting sharks and the market-moving whales at the very top. Every single layer has its own critical job to do. And really, that's the core dynamic of this whole thing. It's this beautiful, complicated dance. On one side, you have the relentless, steady buying pressure from millions of shrimp and crabs, creating this incredibly strong foundation. And on the other side, you have the huge, strategic, powerful moves of the whales that come in and define the major market cycles. So now you've got the framework. You can see the market not just as a random line on a chart, but as this living, breathing ecosystem. So the next time you see a big price move, you can ask yourself, was that the dolphins testing resistance? Are the sharks starting to sell? Or is that just the slow, powerful tide of the shrimp and crabs just buying the dip again? Now you know who's who. So what are you going to watch for?